Richard Angelo was a model citizen. He was a dedicated nurse, someone you could trust with your life. Or so you would have thought. Angelo held a dark obsession that would shatter the lives of many and leave a community in disbelief. This is the story of Richard Angelo, the killer nurse who preyed on the sick.
Angelo's crime sent ripples through Long Island, New York. The place where people sought healing became a hunting ground for a cold-blooded killer. Patients who walked into the hospital never expected their lives to be cut short by the very person sworn to protect them.
Nurses are often seen as angels of mercy, providing comfort and care during some of life's most vulnerable moments. However, Richard Angelo twisted this sacred trust, exploiting his position to fulfill his own desires. Angelo's actions cast a shadow over the nursing profession, leaving many questioning how someone entrusted with such responsibility could commit such devious acts. His crimes shook the medical community, forcing hospitals and healthcare professionals to reevaluate their protocols and safeguards to prevent similar tragedies from happening again. Families who had entrusted their loved ones to the care of Good Samaritan Medical Center were left grappling with the horrifying realization that their loved ones may have been victims of a cold-blooded killer. The hospital became a place of dread and suspicion. The community struggled to come to terms with the fact that a killer had been living and working among them, hiding in plain sight. The investigation into Angelo's crimes would uncover a trail of deceit, manipulation, and a disturbing desire for control that would forever alter the lives of those touched by his evil. Richard Angelo was born on August 29, 1962, into a world that seemed to promise a bright future. His parents, both respected educators, instilled in him the value of knowledge and service. They lived in Lindenhurst, a typical Long Island suburb where life revolved around school, family, and community. To those who knew them, the Angelos were a picture of normalcy. Richard attended St. John the Baptist Diocesan High School, a prestigious institution where he excelled academically. He was an average student, but showed a particular interest in science and medicine. His parents were proud of his aspirations, encouraging him to pursue a career that would make a difference in the world. They believed he had the potential to achieve great things, just as they had in their chosen fields. Angelo's decision to pursue nursing seemed like a natural choice, given his upbringing in a family dedicated to education and helping others. His mother, an economics teacher, instilled in him the importance of hard work and discipline, while his father, a high school guidance counselor, nurtured his empathy and understanding of human behavior. These qualities, they believed, would serve him well in the medical field. In 1980, Richard enrolled in the nursing program at Farmingdale State College, eager to embark on his chosen path. He approached his studies with the same diligence and focus that had characterized his academic life thus far. His professors found him to be a bright and capable student, though some noted a certain detachment, a quiet intensity that set him apart from his peers. Despite his outward success, there were hints of a darker side to Richard Angelo, a hidden current of something unsettling beneath the surface. Some classmates recall him being withdrawn and introverted, preferring the company of his textbooks to the camaraderie of student life. He seemed to lack the easygoing nature and empathy that drew many to the nursing profession. Rumors circulated about odd behavior, strange pronouncements about life and death that made some uneasy. He seemed to possess a morbid fascination with the fragility of life, a preoccupation with the power dynamics between caregivers and patients. These whispers, however, were dismissed as the eccentricities of a brilliant but socially awkward young man. For months, a pattern unfolded within the walls of Good Samaritan Medical Center, a pattern that would eventually unravel the truth about Richard Angelo. Patients, many already frail and vulnerable, began experiencing unexpected medical crises. Their conditions worsened rapidly, sending shockwaves through the hospital staff. Some noticed slight discrepancies in medication charts, minor irregularities that could easily be attributed to human error. Others couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, a nagging sense that something lurked beneath the surface of these unexplained medical emergencies. The case that shattered the illusion of normalcy and exposed Richard Angelo for the monster he truly was began on October 1987. Gerolamo Kuchich, a 73-year-old patient, was admitted to Good Samaritan for a routine procedure. He had no reason to suspect that he wouldn't leave the hospital alive and well.
But fate had other plans for me.
Shortly after being settled into his room, he began experiencing a terrifying medical emergency. His breathing became labored, his muscles seized, and his heart raced erratically. Nurses and doctors rushed to his bedside, working frantically to stabilize his condition, but the cause of his sudden decline remained a mystery. As Mr. Kuchich fought for his life, one detail stood out to the medical team. His symptoms were consistent with those of someone who had been administered a paralytic agent. The hospital staff, already on high alert due to the recent string of unusual medical emergencies, immediately suspected foul play. Their suspicions fell upon Richard Angelo, a young nurse who had been present during many of the recent incidents.
I didn't do anything wrong, I swear.
Angelo's demeanor, usually quiet and reserved, had become increasingly erratic in recent weeks. He seemed to relish the chaos of medical emergencies, often inserting himself into situations that didn't directly involve him. When questioned, Angelo denied any wrongdoing, but his nervous demeanor and shifting alibis did little to quell the growing suspicion surrounding him. Richard Angelo's weapon of choice was as insidious as it was readily available within the hospital walls. Paralytic drugs. Pancuronium bromide and succinylcholine chloride, powerful muscle relaxants used in surgical procedures, became his instruments of terror. In the hands of a skilled medical professional, these drugs served a vital purpose, but Angelo saw in them a way to exert control, to hold the power of life and death in his hands. He understood the paralytic's effects with chilling clarity. He knew that these drugs, administered covertly, would induce terrifying symptoms: muscle paralysis, respiratory distress, and ultimately cardiac arrest. His victims, unable to move or cry for help, would suffer a silent, agonizing death. Angelo's motives, like his methods, were complex and deeply disturbing. He craved the admiration and recognition that came with being a hero, with being the one who swooped in to save the day. His desire for validation, however, was twisted into a grotesque game, a macabre performance where he played both villain and savior. He would inject his victims with the paralytic drugs, watching as their bodies betrayed them, as fear gripped their eyes. Then, in a perverse display of heroism, he would step forward, pretending to discover their distress, frantically administering CPR and calling for assistance. In those moments, he reveled in the attention, the frantic energy of the medical team. As they fought to save a life, he had intentionally pushed to the brink. As suspicions solidified around Richard Angelo, investigators meticulously pieced together the puzzle of his crimes. They reviewed patient records, noting the alarming correlation between Angelo's shifts and the unexplained medical emergencies. Interviews with hospital staff revealed a pattern of Angelo's unusual behavior, his eagerness to respond to crises, and his unsettling fascination with death. The medical examiner's office played a crucial role in building the case against Angelo. Tissue samples from exhumed bodies revealed the presence of the paralytic drugs, confirming the worst fears. The science was irrefutable. These patients had been deliberately poisoned. Confronted with mounting evidence, Richard Angelo cracked. He confessed to poisoning numerous patients at Good Samaritan, providing chilling details of his methods and his twisted motivations. His confession sent shockwaves through the community and beyond, exposing the dark underbelly of a trusted profession and the monstrous capacity for evil that can lurk within the human heart.
His confession, while shocking, did little to answer the question that haunted the victims' families and the community at large. Why? What drove a seemingly normal young man to commit such horrific acts? Some speculated that Angelo derived a sadistic thrill from playing God, from holding the power of life and death in his hands. Others pointed to a deep-seated psychological disturbance, a twisted desire for control and recognition that manifested in the most horrific way imaginable.
The trial of Richard Angelo commenced in the spring of 1989, casting a long shadow over Long Island. The courtroom became a stage for a chilling drama, as prosecutors meticulously laid out the case against the former nurse, painting a picture of calculated cruelty and a callous disregard for human life. The weight of evidence against Angelo was substantial, each piece adding to the portrait of a killer hiding in plain sight. Medical records, meticulously organized and presented by the prosecution, revealed a damning pattern. Angelo's shifts coincided with a spike in unexplained patient deaths and medical emergencies, a statistical anomaly too significant to ignore. The presence of paralytic drugs in the exhumed bodies of his victims, confirmed by forensic experts, solidified the prosecution's claim. These were not natural deaths, but cold-blooded murders. The trial captivated Long Island, dividing the community between those who believed in Angelo's guilt and a small but vocal contingent who clung to the image of the clean-cut young nurse they thought they knew. The courtroom gallery was filled to capacity each day with reporters, families of the victims, and curious onlookers eager to witness the unfolding drama. One by one, witnesses took the stand, their testimonies painting a complex and often contradictory picture of Richard Angelo. Fellow nurses recounted their growing suspicions, their unease at Angelo's behavior, his eagerness to respond to emergencies. Families of the victims, overcome with grief and anger, shared heartbreaking stories of their loved ones. The testimonies continued, each adding another layer to the portrait of a man who hid his dark intentions behind a mask of professionalism and care. Angelo's defense team, faced with overwhelming evidence, mounted a risky and ultimately unsuccessful case. They argued that Angelo, while perhaps guilty of professional misconduct, was not a cold-blooded killer. Their strategy hinged on portraying Angelo as a deeply troubled young man, crippled by mental illness and driven to commit a series of desperate and misguided acts.
I never intended to kill anyone. I injected the patients with the paralytic drugs, but I wanted to be seen as a hero. I created emergencies I could then swoop in and resolve, earning the admiration of my colleagues and superiors.
Angelo himself took the stand, his testimony a chilling mix of half-truths, evasions, and unsettling pronouncements. After weeks of testimony, the jury reached a verdict. On December 14, 1989, Richard Angelo was found guilty of 2 counts of second-degree murder, 1 count of second-degree manslaughter, 1 count of criminally negligent homicide, 2 counts of first-degree assault, and 3 counts of second-degree assault. The courtroom, filled to capacity, erupted in gasps and sobs as the verdict was read. Angelo, his face pale and emotionless, showed no visible reaction as he was led away in handcuffs. On January 24, 1990, he was sentenced to 61 1/3 years to life in prison, a sentence that brought a sense of closure to the families of his victims, but could never truly erase the pain and suffering he had inflicted. Richard Angelo, the angel of death, had been brought to justice, but the shadow of his crimes continued to loom large over Long Island. Richard Angelo, once a trusted nurse, now spends his days confined within the cold, sterile walls of Great Meadow Correctional Facility. His crimes earned him a sentence of 50 years to life, a stark contrast to the lives he so cruelly cut short. Angelo's victims and their families grapple with the devastating aftermath of his actions. The healing process is slow and arduous, a testament to the enduring impact of trauma. Even with Angelo's conviction, unsettling ambiguity lingers. The full extent of his crimes may never be known. The investigation couldn't link him to every suspicious death. The question that haunts everyone is why? What drove an ordinary young man to such darkness? Experts speculate a severe personality disorder or undiagnosed mental illness. The answers may lie within Angelo's mind, a chilling reminder of the mysteries of the human psyche.